Welcome to the Murabiyoon Show, raising awareness of Islamic schools.
Bismillah. Ustadh, linking back to the previous episode where we started to talk about the framework around one's identity, we're now going to go from one's beliefs to one's values.
Yes. Which then comes with the question, what are the values that we need to teach, right? So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah wa ba'd. When it comes to values, it really relates back to what we had in the previous episode. If I just maybe can summarize that episode again. The most important test for any person in his or her life, what is that going to be? What's the most important test? I'll bring it a bit closer. I want you to look at life more than just from when you're born to when you die. Okay. But life, there's a life before, as we know, there's a life now, there's a life in the barzakh, there's one in akhirah. And in that whole period, there is one test that has 3 questions. We know the questions, we know the answers. It's the most important test in any person's life. What is the test?
When you die and you're in your grave.
Exactly. And what are the questions?
Who is your Lord? What is your religion? And who is this man?
Exactly. If you can answer these, and we all know the answers to the questions, Man Rabbuk, Ma Dinuk, Man Nabiyuk. Who is your Lord? What is your religion? What is the way of life that you have chosen? And who is the person, the prophet that you are following? If you can answer these questions in that moment, you're saved. You're successful.
Inshallah, Allah give us that success.
May Allah grant us all that success. But the point here I'm trying to make is we focus a lot on these tests in this dunya. You know, SATs, GCSEs, A-levels, university, driving license, etc., all these tests, and we prepare for them, and we do past tests, and you know what we do. And it's right. I'm not even saying it's wrong. I mean, the system is like that. But we don't focus too much on this one test. And if we think that we can just say, yeah, Allah, Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and that we will remember, and that we will be, in our presence, that we can say it like that without actually preparing for it. If you think about it, it's not going to work.
No.
It's not going to work. So what we need to do now as a transition from speaking about beliefs to speaking about values, we need to realize that there is a way of preparing to be able to say Rabbi Allah, meaning I need to learn about Allah.
Yeah.
There is a way of preparing about being able to say my deen, my way of life is Islam.
Yeah. And
that is by implementing Islam. Yes. Stick to the halal, stay away from the haram, do what you are meant to do. Your salah, your zakah, your siyam, your hajj, etc. Implement Islam. Live as a Muslim consciously. There is a way of preparing to be able to say Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is my prophet. Read about the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Read about the seerah. Practice the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Bring salawat upon the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, etc. There's a way of doing that. Most of our children will be able to mention names of all, Premier League teams here. But if you ask them about the children of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, many would struggle.
Yes.
If you extend it to the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, even more would struggle. Ask them about the Ashra al-Mubashirin bil-Jannah, most will struggle.
Yes.
And that's a problem, because we're not focusing on the right area, if that makes sense, on the right test, if that makes sense. Okay, so we need to start bringing that in there. And so the question then is, what are the values that we teach? So what do you think? Where should we look?
The values that we would teach, I guess the kind of obvious ones that come along are things like being honest, trustworthy. They're good traits for a person to hold.
Yeah. What I would say to that is true. And you go to different schools and different madrasas and you see the values nicely written on the wall.
Yeah.
But my question is always, where do you anchor them? Where do you get this from?
You've got to get it from the Sunnah.
Qur'an and Sunnah, exactly. And so what we need to develop is a framework of values that we stick to and that we do systematically teach to our children. And do that in the most beautiful way. Like we have in the introductory ayat to this from Surah Yusuf, where you can see two prophets, Yaqub alayhi salam and Yusuf alayhi salam. Oh my dear son. And he says, do not relate your vision, your dream to your brothers. They will plot against you, teaching him values, teaching him what to do, what not to do, etc., etc. Surely shaitan is a sworn enemy, about this, then you can see the transition between beliefs and values there, teaching him some of the ways. And the whole surah then speaks about certain values, etc. You have another, you can go through the entire Qur'an and try to extract the values, which would be a nice exercise. In fact, I'm trying to convince one of the Huffaz, one of my friends, to do this exercise together. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, there are certain surahs and certain passages in certain surahs that are full of values that are sort of summarizing. So, for example, Surah Yusuf is a beautiful example. Surah Luqman is a beautiful example. The whole passage where Luqman alayhi salam speaks to his son, teaches him, starting again with Tawheed and then Birrul Walidain and then how to walk and how to talk, and then these are some of the values. And you could extract it from there. For Apex, where I've been teaching for the last 13 years, we've extracted the school values from Surah Al-Furqan. And I think we spoke about them off camera before.
That's right.
And we established this framework. We call it the Fitra values. I'm not saying you have to do that or anything like that, but this is just how there's a passage in Surah Al-Furqan where Allah speaks about Ibadur Rahman, the servants of the most merciful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then comes a whole passage of what are the sifat, the characteristics of Ibadur Rahman, of those servants of Allah. The highest title anyone can get in this world. Not a doctor, not a PhD, these are all nice and good, but the highest title is that Allah calls you, not you can call yourself, that Allah calls you Abd, my slave, my servant. It's the highest title. So in that passage, Allah speaks about what it takes to be, to attain that title of Ibadur Rahman.
Okay, so the characteristics that require.
Exactly. So we sort of did the exercise, we sort of read through it and, extracted some of them. And then we run obviously into the problem of how do we then summarize them in such a way that the children can remember. And so we came up with this, we grouped them together into 5 groups. And the groups, we titled them faithful, being faithful, to do with Iman, worship, knowing about Allah, Tawheed, being informed, being an ummah of Iqra, of reading and sorts of being informed generally, Talabatul Ilm, being tolerant, the aspect of mercy, being responsible, take ownership.
Okay.
That's one of the groups. And then the last one is about being active, being bold, being shuja'a and all of that. And so if you take the first letters of those 5 groups, they ends up Fitra, right? Fitra. That's why we call them Fitra values.
Nice.
So that's the framework that we've built at school. And in essence, what we're trying to do is, we're encouraging the teachers that after each lesson, you should have a plenary of about 2 minutes at the end of each lesson, and just ask one simple question: how do we connect the learning objectives of this lesson to our Fitra values?
Okay.
And let the children explore. And that is for every lesson: maths, literacy, geography, Islamic studies, every lesson. And you can see the most creative suggestions from the children. But the point here is that they're doing it daily. Daily, they're consciously speaking about values. This is a cognitive approach that they're learning. Beautiful way of trying to make the children aware about the values, the importance of values, and teach them some of the most important values that we have.
MashaAllah, I really like that. I really like the way that you've devised the values, the source that it's come from,
Yeah.
and also the way that you've applied it, obviously within your setting. Let's bring this episode to a close. Any final remarks?
You see, sometimes you pick up values from where we live. I'll give you an example. Confidence.
Okay.
And we spoke about that.
Yep.
Confidence important? I would say so.
Of course.
But then I would say, what type of confidence? Because sometimes we're just picking up certain values that we think, yeah, they're Islamic, but we have no consideration, are they really? And is there some, because what the ulama differentiate is between الثقة بالنفس والثقة بالله. الثقة بالنفس, meaning that you rely solely on you.
Okay.
Yeah, you're confident to the point that you, and that may actually lead you to shirk.
Yep.
If you don't connect it, in fact, if you don't have some other thiqah, some other confidence, which is even superior to it, which is الثقة بالله, confidence in the help of Allah, confidence in Allah, husnul dhan billah,
Yep.
and that Allah will enable you to do
Whatever it is.
whatever it is. That type of confidence we need to teach to our children.
Correct.
So we can't just pick up, but we need to try to root those values in the Qur'an, in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And most importantly, I like to end this episode on the one most beautiful dua. You know the passage I mentioned, Surah Al-Furqan? It ends with the dua. The whole, after mentioning all these characteristics of Ibadur Rahman, it ends with the beautiful dua. What is the dua?
Go for it.
ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما. Right? What does it mean? Two parts. First, oh Allah, grant me from my spouse and my offspring قرة الأعين. What's that? Coolness of the eyes. What's that? Or, you know, if you think about it, what's that? It is basically you asking Allah, Ya Allah, when I come home and I see my spouse and I see my children, I want to have tears of joy in my eyes. Coolness of qurratu ayn. I want to have tears of joy in my eyes. And now that I've made dua for them, Ya Allah, I made dua for them, now I'm making dua for me. وَجَعَلْنَا, and make us role models. Imam here in this dua means role models, not the Imam in the masjid. For those who have taqwa, make us basically, Ya Allah, make me a role model. And so the aspect of modeling is really important. In fact, when it comes to values and behavior, as we will have in the next episode, inshallah, role modeling is the most important way of teaching the values and the characteristics, not the talk. Talk can be cheap,
Sure.
as in not cheap, but can be easy, you know. It's
Yep.
easier said than done.
Of course.
But kids will observe. And once they observe, they will copy. And so role modeling here, you're literally making dua to Allah. Ya Allah, I'm making dua for my spouse, I'm making dua for my children. I want to have tears of joy in my eyes. And as for me, Ya Allah, make me a role model. Make me stand up to my responsibility and be a role model. May Allah help us all.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair, Ustad.
Allah barak fikum.